Hello everyone, and welcome to the Ancient Alternative View, where we look at all aspects of ancient history and try and rewrite the narrative through physical evidence and DNA evidence that we can see in front of us. We look at the narrative of written history, and they didn't have technologies available, more passed down word of mouth, where today we have evidence written in stone. Now I'd like to bring you to the Nub language videos that I've done. Andrew from Ancient History Criticisms and I found many moons ago a hallmark written in stone, and we brought it to life looking at well over 100 sites, I've been told, where we've found different nubs. This is an engineering phenomenon that we have brought to the forefront of ancient history. With our team, Ziggy Dan came onto our last show and we discussed India, and we've looked at the Britishwara Temple, Gampur. Andrew's catalogued many different versions of these nubs, as have I. Now, one question that I get asked is, where are the nubs? What are the hallmarks that you guys study? Now, I do a folder of some of my finds on Pinterest, the Ancient Alternative View, and quite simply, you can go to any ancient site that you want. You can bring up pictures of it and study, basically, each block. Some are even harder to find than others. I mean, take for example temples in India where you find internal nubs, which you wouldn't necessarily deem as lifting because they're at the bottom. And we speak as a team to find what these nubs were for. You've got cases at the Menkaure pyramid, I'm sure you've all heard me talk about, with Andrew and with the team as well. We've done a video on the Britishwara Temple where they are all over the front of the temple. Now, you yourself can go and look for these nubs. It's a case of picking any ancient site that you would like. Now, one main question is, what are we talking about when it comes to variation within the nubs? Well, a lot of people say to me, Phil, the mainstream says that these are for lifting. Well, when you've got a corner block such as this, if you think about it, with the actual size of the block itself and how big it is, that is not conducive for lifting now, is it? Also here, look at the size of the block. I mean, whether that was in half, I think it's actually a full block and this is a seam. This small nub here is not conducive for lifting. Now, I'm not saying in every instance that nubs are not for lifting. Hence why there are a variation to the different nubs. I mean, take for argument's sake here, Stonehenge, one of the oldest photos, has a big nub at the top of it here. It's a variation of nub, certainly not for lifting, not unless we had cranes that lifted 150 ton blocks 6,500 years ago. Now, Phillip, we've got photos here of base stone nubs. Andrew and I look at these with the team on a daily basis. Now, these are far too shallow to be lifting nubs. Look at that. There's no way that block was lifted into position with this here and this here. It just wasn't going to happen now, was it? Now, when you think about it, these variations change considerably all the time, and what we want to bring to the forefront is people understanding the nubs themselves come in different shapes and sizes. Number one, we get circular, we get triangular, we get square, Now you yourselves can go onto my folder and you can take a look at the different nub variations yourself. They're found everywhere in the four corners of the world. There's certain people that have done comparison photos themselves and found different comparisons from India. This is a war angle at the bottom here, Couldnt amber, which is at the top in Peru, and we surmise that these different lines, which I have done on the nub language, comprised with different nubs at different parts of the block, make up a language. Now it's funny that we find the same configurations in India as we do in Peru. Now if this was not a worldwide connection, why are they in the four corners of the world? South America and India are not close now, come on. These are not for lifting. These blocks are 50 tons plus. These are what, 6 inches protruding, and they are different shapes. They are irregular. Some have 1 on, some have 2 on. This is polygonal natured stonework. Why would they have done it when they didn't need to? Now the base stone blocks, as I keep harping on about episode to episode, prove that there's no way they needed to be lifted there. I mean, Sagasta, we've got column base stone nubs that you can see here. You know, you've got, let's see if we can bring this up a little bit clearer for you. You've got at the bottom here square nubs. They go all the way across. You've also got them on the base here. Now why would you have them for lifting if they're on the bottom here? Just simply is not conducive for that. Now through the sites that Andrew, I and the team have looked at, these variations change. Of course we've got the box nubs, which can be found in Turkey, they can be found in Greece, they can be found in Egypt, just but to name a few. Here, I mean, look at that, one singular square nub. Fantastic site, Delphi, absolutely beautiful site, and the nubs are still configured the same. Amphitheatre nubs, there's over 280 different amphitheatres around the world, and we're trying to find original configurations to see whether they're linked to the stars. Now if you've been keeping up with the Nub series, you're going to be able to tell me, all of you, there is no way Yangshan we were able to lift a 16.5 thousand ton megalith. Now weren't we? We've also looked at the underneath of here before, very conducive to Zone X in South America. Quarried, well, 35,000 tons of Yangshan was not getting pulled with ropes out of this quarry, I'm sorry to say. Now, not unless we're missing some serious amount of technology, by the way. Now, do the mineralogies count? That's another question that everyone answers. We go across to India. We've looked at this image before. Look here at the singular base stone square nub. Let's bring that one up a little bit and have a little look at that. Open it up in a new tab. Now what I'd like to show you here is, if you zoom into it, if we can get to it, do you see at the back there the small square nub at the bottom? Now why these singular more ornate base stone nubs? Were they an engineering mark for the maker? Because this phenomenon does not just stop there. As I say, there's hundreds and hundreds of different sites. Now you've got ones in bedrock. Now unless you were lifting the mountain itself, you weren't going to lift with these nubs, now were you? Now I digress slightly here. Above this image we've got what's called an incised motif. Now if we go back to the beginning, this is what we look at and we talk about as different hallmarks. Now if you click into my incised motifs folder, I mean these are Lake Titicaca. Does it remind you as a researcher of anywhere? Of course it reminds you of Petra. They look at very similar sites. Let's go and have a little look into there, just so you can see it a bit closer. Now, yeah, alright, the quality of the photo isn't great, but these headers are incised motifs, exactly the same as we find at Petra. Now, is that conducive of the same builder? Same as South America. I mean, just so happens on this example here that we've got nubs as well, and I'm going to be honest with you, there's absolutely no way with the depth of these nubs that you are going to be lifting with them now, are you? Bear with me. I'm going to find hundreds of images here before we get to ours. We'll look at it here. These are the size of the nubs, and this is the incised motif. Now this is all over the world as well. You find examples that were on Palmyra that was destroyed. This is South America. Why would you lift with that shallow nub? And if you see, Andrew and I always talk about standardized nubs. Well, this is a circular standardized nub. Now you get different varieties. I'm sick to death of saying that then for non-lifting, but anyway, there's Palmyra, and Palmyra's incised motifs. Before she was rudely destroyed, they were at the top here, just to show that this was a worldwide motif. I think this is a great one, great picture. See if we can bring this one up for you. If you look here, the different sized nubs, almost like our regular standardized nub with a squarer nub here. Look at the size of that nub, and in comparison to the boy, I mean, I'm sure you're all aware of this monument. Look at the incised motif that runs all the way up. Now, is this conducive to some kind of stone softening? Was this a mural just over here? It was shot. There's another massive nub, and at the end a huge nub. I've got images of that too. But was this some sort of storyboard? We've looked at that also. I think it's quite ironic that the young man here is pointing to the incised motif almost as if to say, this means something. Well, of course it does, ladies and gentlemen of the ancient alternative view, and this is what we try to show on the channel. The hallmarks, the nubs, the incised motifs, the bevel blocks. This is a completely different one. I'm going to do a separate video on the Zoroastrian circular hallmark pass. This circular hallmark was passed generation to generation, and I'm going to do a video on that, so I won't spoil it for you. But these are the incised motifs. Now if we go back to the beginning, I showed you these because if you'd like to go and look and familiarise yourselves with the nubs, the bevel blocks, let's have a look at the bevel blocks so you're aware of those. I mean, some of these we've named ourselves because there was no specific name for them. I mean, you've got such massive bevel blocks at Nimrod's fortress, for argument's sake, then Lycian versions in Turkey, they're very much more ornate, and as we come down you can see the different nature. I mean, this is a Colosseum here, so yes, I hate to say it, the Romans may have had that technology. However, were the Colosseums already inherited by them? Because Nimrod's fortress, you can see the quality of Nimrod's work. Bear with me 2 seconds. These are bevel blocks, and massive bevel blocks at that, at Nimrod's. Probably some of the biggest that you see in the world, to be honest. Then we also find these little puffy bevel edge blocks. One of my favourite sets of bevel edge blocks is like the Kergan of Kirsch. These are absolutely crazy to look at. I'll tell you for why. It shows a variation that changes all the way down to where, almost like the surface treatment, we call these puffy edged bevel blocks. And this shape is continued all the way through the ancient world. We find it in Egypt, find it here at the Kergan. What I find interesting, almost like they're showing us the different techniques, how you get a bevel block with a more refined edge here, more of a puffy one here, on other images which I have got down here they're more nubbed, so they could change the variation as to when and how they wanted to. So that's another hallmark right there, is the bevel blocks. Again, let's go and show you a few more so you can familiarise yourself with them. You also find them at Baalbek. Baalbek above the infamous trilithon stones. Very fine bevel blocks. We'll take a look at that. If we can. Oh, maybe we can't on that one. Let's have a look. Very fine bevel blocks attributed to the Romans. The Romans at no point moved these trilithon stones. We can prove that as well. My great friend Dave at Uchronia Utopia. I'll just say one thing, the evidence is all in the coins. We can show you that as well, but that's for another day. Just to show you these hallmarks for now, so you know yourself what you're looking for. That's not to suggest or teach anybody to suck eggs. That is because we get asked the question so many times, what does that hallmark mean? What are you looking at there? For argument's sake, the trapezoidal shapes that we find in the Incan, the Egyptian, you know, we find these all over the world, and you can go on here and check them out for yourselves. One thing that I have been looking into in my crazy archaeology folder is whether we can relate the 25,000 year clock and its configurations to specific temples around the world with nubs, to see whether we can date them. Now, on my travels with Andrew around the world with nubs, mainly you get 1, 2, 3 and 4 nub configurations. Now, we bang on about singular ornate nubs that you might find in India. We also bang on about whether this clock could relate to the stars to maybe date the temples. So that's what I'm looking at in detail, to hopefully date the temples in episodes to come from now. So we shall see whether that is possible. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Maybe I'm banging my head against a brick wall, but isn't it time we all started looking outside the box? Because the fact is, these hallmarks are actually here in stone. Now, people that say to me, there's no such thing as ancient technology, Phil. It simply doesn't exist. Well, I bring your attention to this image here. Hopefully we can get a big image of it. Now, if you look at, oh dear, we've lost it, bear with me. If we look here, again, circular hallmark pass, it's a different video, but at the bottom, why after such a masterpiece would you have taken this line of stone out? Well, you wouldn't, would you? What on earth carved this circular, I say carved, I'm not sure the expression to use, but what tool could have possibly taken that out of the mineralogy of a mountain, and you can see yourselves the mineralogies are completely different, aren't they? I find that intriguing, which we'll look at also on an ancient technologies episode. Stone softening, alchemic remedy. We look at double serpent hallmarks that are around the world. We've got them in India, we've got them in Egypt, we've got them in South America, Indonesia, Scotland, Ireland. The shell found on double serpents, for you, those of you that don't know the shell motif, it's actually the Venus motif. Certainly isn't attributed to the Romans, but it's at Baalbek. It's also in Egypt as well. You'll probably see examples of that in this folder. This here, what does that remind you of? And that's in South America at the Temple of the Condor. I'll leave you to use your imaginations there. Certainly no copper chisels, sticks and stones were used on any of these. Again, another example of this technology we keep seeing ripping through the Zoroastrian artwork. I find that absolutely unbelievable. What could have done that? I'm open to your ideas, but why and what cut into the mineralogy of that artwork like that after its making? I'd love to hear your thoughts, Ancient Alternative View. Now, again, let's keep on going down here on the hallmarks. And this is my crazy archaeology folder, he says. Let's go back to, yeah. I had a look on this one here. I've put it out there on Twitter to show people this, but I'm hoping this will open up a little bit bigger for you to see, and then I'll leave you to have a look for your own hallmarks and come back to me after you've had a look. Let's see whether it comes up any bigger for us. Maybe it isn't, but if you look here, it looks to me in between the stonework like there's a metallic object. Now, I spoke to NEXT about this, South American specialist. Does brilliant work over in Egypt. What he doesn't know out there maybe isn't worth knowing. And this temple is a lot newer than other temples. But nonetheless, why would you have metal in between the stonework? And is it metal? Well, you can go and have a look on my Twitter and have a look and see yourselves, because I've enlarged it. It's on Pinterest, you can go and have a look yourselves. And with these hallmarks, it's all about going and having a look yourselves on these photos at ancient sites. It's not Andrew and I found this and prescribed to everyone this is what it is. It's for all of us to decide. But the nub phenomena is here to stay, and the folders that are live on my Pinterest, I'll show you now. You've got nubs there. I've got a non-flight bird hallmark, my ancient Egypt folder, loads of hallmarks crop up twice, and I've got my nubs on blocks folder. Now you're welcome to go into here, put selections of them on so you can see the variations of the nubs. Now this is bedrock, South America, ×4 configuration with a ×3. How would you be lifting bedrock? You wouldn't be lifting a mountain. Andrew and I surmise the hitching post of the sun, the nub on that. Well, this is bedrock as well. Could it be unspent stone that was used for technology? Again, here in Jerusalem, you can see, I'll zoom in slightly, the bevel edged quality. to the block, and the square nature of the nub, which is the same mineralogy as the stone around it. That's not going to be for lifting when it's a foot, if not more than that. It's just bigger than your average block that we would use today. So why is that there? I'm not saying that it's a language marker. It's more of a singular ornate block nub, isn't it? But these are the variations we're contending with and finding for people to look at. Some examples, maybe they are for lifting. In some, I'm open to that. But in many, many of these examples, look at the coracancha. These blocks are too small to be lifting. We look at this on nub language number 1. Far too small. Too square, too ornate. There's just no need for these blocks to have lifting aids on. So when in its entirety, could there be shadow play? Some sort of throne? Have they been moved and reconfigured? All questions that need answering, that we try to answer here at the Ancient Alternative View, and obviously within the team. Do you see the ×3 configuration here? South America, 1, 2, 3 nubs. Very similar here to here of the incised motif. Yes, both South America, but nonetheless, same builders. Some are used here, and they're functional nubs, what we class as functional nubs. It's down as a dolmen. I am presuming this would have been a huge doorway to a more massive complex. One here that I'd like to show you. The size of this nub, but underneath it a beveled line. There's actually a better image of that on here. And the nub, the block next to it actually has, let me just find it for you. Come on. Bear with me, my internet's on a wobbler. Let's just go back down again. And you're seeing all the different variations as we're scrolling down. But do you see it here? Same doorway, nub on the base stone. You wouldn't want to be lifting that now, would you? Not into position there. It's not a chance. And I love this example. Why would the Inca have hidden pre-Inca stonework? Well, to preserve a language. People say if they're just for lifting, why was it preserved up until recent times by Incan stonework? Crispin over at the Nubstone language does fantastic images of these. It's very, very close to finding the alphabet for it. So, and as we were before, the ×3 configurations. Anyway, as you can see, these are the folders that are on the internet for you to go and have a look at, that I've made myself, of the different hallmarks that we look at and we stand by. Lozenge folder here. Whilst we're out there live, don't get me wrong, there's hundreds saved on my computer, as Andrew has got. We've worked for years tirelessly to collect these folders. So if you'd like to study the variations within the hallmarks, the dubs, the bevel blocks, the lozenges, the incised motifs, you're more than welcome to go and have a look on my Pinterest and take a look for yourselves. Now, one person that I'd like to say a massive thank you to, is Michael over at the Lost History channel, TKTC. Now he does a Squatter Man series at the moment. All his newest videos are here, and for want of a better word, he's an absolute legend with what he does. His work isn't being viewed as much as it should, although it's getting what looks like huge views. He doesn't need my thanks, but he made the intro for my video as part of an engagement present for myself and my beautiful wife to be, Sam. And I'd like to say thank you very much indeed. She's the videographer and one of the photographers along with myself for the channel. And what's coming up next is Andrew and I at Ancient History Criticisms will be doing some more work on the Nub language and the Nubs of the world, coming up very soon, and I'd love to see you there. Thank you to my team, and I'll see you all very soon, Ancient Alternative View, for the next episode. Thank you very much indeed for watching.